The mid-range smartphone market is highly competitive, but unfortunately a lot of the options below $300 aren't really great bang for your buck. But is the Huawei P20 Lite? The outside looks promising, but is the inside too? Hey, I'm Brian and this is my review. As always, let's begin with the design and build. And also basically as always, we find ourselves with a metal and glass sandwich, a very thin one at 7mm. I'm a fan of the blue color I have here. The back is also very shiny, close to the finish of the mirror black OnePlus 6. And you guessed it, that means it easily collects fingerprints and is very slippery. I feel like I could just copy and paste this part for basically every phone at this point. There's one thing I unfortunately can't do that with though. The phone isn't water resistant, not even splash proof. The buttons feel good if not exceptional. Overall though, build quality is a bit better than the similarly priced G6 Plus I would say, due to the sides actually being aluminium. There is still a headphone jack and thank God also a USB Type-C port, because I wouldn't recommend a phone with micro USB anymore. The SIM card tray either takes 2 SIM cards, fortunately, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to test LTE properly because I have a dual SIM setup, or you can also switch one of them out for a micro SD card if expandable storage is more what you want. Finishing up with the frame, we get to the speaker. It's mono, kinda tinny, and basically silent when you cover it up, so it's not really a strong point. Moving to the front, we have the display. It's a 5.8-inch Full HD Plus LCD panel with rounded corners and a notch. This display really adds value to the phone, because a screen-to-body ratio like this is hard to find at this price point. Also, before you comment that you hate the notch, you should maybe bear in mind that what's happening here is that the display is being extended on both sides of the front sensors, and not those being extended into the screen. And as always, you can hide it with a software setting. But since it's an LCD, it doesn't fully hide the notch, especially in the dark because the pixels aren't 100% black. The display also doesn't get super bright and has pretty cold calibration from the factory. That's tweakable in the settings though, and to its credit, there is a night mode and the colors are pretty vivid for an LCD at this price. But another disadvantage of an LCD is no ambient or always on display for notifications. There is an RGB LED for that though. Let's talk about an always very controversial point with Chinese smartphones, the software. Huawei is doing better. It's still not stock Android, but it's manageable. You can now enable an app drawer, which I did, and if you don't like it, you can always install Nova. But even the stock launcher comes with the Google feed. The theme engine doesn't really do anything though. In my opinion, the themes in there are just worse. What I find a bit annoying is the number of pre-installed apps. There aren't a lot of duplicates, but rather just pretty useless additions like a mirror or third-party apps. Most of these, but not all, can be uninstalled. The somewhat heavy skin doesn't considerably hurt performance though. That's pretty good. It's not unbelievably snappy, but there also aren't really any hiccups, except in Twitter, which is all you can really want from a mid-range phone. Maybe Huawei's own silicon really shows an advantage here. We have the Kirin 659, a big little octa-core with up to 2.4 GHz if you're not familiar, paired with 4 GB of RAM and 64 GB of storage. That's not an extraordinary, but still a good, because not necessarily standard combination at this price. The fingerprint sensor on the back is fast too. Also on the back are the cameras. It's obviously a dual camera. What did you think? The main sensor is 16 megapixels with an f2.2 aperture, and the secondary is just a 2 megapixel one for depth information. The pictures are great in good light. Nice colors, maybe sometimes even a bit too saturated, and plenty of dynamic range. There's a bit much sharpening for my taste though, especially if you zoom in, like to the point where I would just seriously recommend to move closer. HDR doesn't really do a whole lot in daylight, except eliminate the automatic sharpening, so you should use it because of that. In low light, HDR does wonders though. While pictures in auto turn out a little dark and have too much sharpening, HDR mode actually produces some respectable results at night. Videos can only be recorded in 1080p, which I find lackluster given that other phones at this price record 4K. There's also a slow-mo feature, but that's so low resolution that it's pretty unusable. The front camera is also 16 megapixels and unfortunately has fixed focus. But it also supports portrait mode, which is why I don't really get the point of the secondary camera on the back. As long as you turn off skin softening, the selfies are pretty nice. Just as nice as battery life. With normal usage, watching videos, browsing, messaging and using the camera, I get about 5 to 6 hours of screen on time. About what you would expect from a 3000 mAh battery. That will definitely get you through the day, maybe even with some room to spare. The battery charges in about 1.5 hours using the included 18 watt adapter. Fast, but not groundbreaking. And you know how I feel about the proprietary standard, no fast charging with the power bank, on this. I also want to mention that you obviously can't expect wireless charging at this price, so that's not here. So what's the verdict? Well, for this price you can't really have everything. What you get here though is good performance, good battery life, a good camera, and a very modern aesthetic and screen-to-body ratio that you don't really get on a lot of phones at this price point. It's a worthy contender for the likes of the Moto G6 or the Mi A2. You just have to choose between the more expensive looking aesthetic on the Huawei and the stock Android on those two. The only problem for all of these though is that the Poco F1 exists. Thanks to Huawei for handing me the P20 Lite for review, and thank you for watching. You know which buttons to press, and don't forget to press that follow button on Twitter. I'm Brian, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.